I think you're talking for capital?
Yeah.
For capital this year, it was speed signs. Signs that not only recognize the speed that the vehicles are traveling, but also collects data for traffic studies for the roads that they are deployed on. And they're radar speed signs essentially, not the same crosswalk signs. The crosswalk replacements are those thin rectangular boards that are in the crosswalks throughout town. That was, I believe, a betterment request that we had put in for those.
See you Thursday, Leon. Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah, you had one last year for like the flashing signs that were going to use at 2 locations for crossing.
Yes, those are in. They're at the PD. We bought those out of last year's capital budget, is it capital or better, last year's budget.
Yeah.
Regardless, they're in. We're just waiting for the weather to be cooperative so that we can mount them and place them and get them operational. So those will be going in at 2 locations, and we're going to see how successful they are, how they look, how they work, how they hold up, before we go ahead and buy any, or request to purchase any additional ones. And I believe the 2 crosswalks that they're going to go in, one is here, and one is on Route 20.
So those are the crosswalk signs we're talking about.
Correct. They're the the crosswalks facing each direction that are wireless with the push button. They're surrounded by the LEDs, similar to the ones that you see on, the sign design is similar to the ones you see on 148.
Oh, the
Except
deer
for instead of
signs.
except for the deer, there's going to be a pedestrian crossing signs that are be at the crosswalk in conjunction with the signs that are already there that the state has provided for. So, but they are hooked up wirelessly, and they've got a solar panel and a battery system to them, so once somebody pushes them, they're activated for a certain amount of seconds so that everybody can cross the road safely, and then they deactivate. So it's just an extra warning system for folks coming and utilizing the crosswalks, especially during times when visibility is an issue in the evening or during inclement weather. The boards that were put in for capital were radar boards, much similar to the ones that you've seen in use before, which tells you what your speed is as you're coming along to slow down, et cetera. But they can also be entered into a silent mode where they're just on the post, used to collect data for how, if somebody's got a speeding issue on a road or they've complained that traffic is too fast and they want us to take a look at it, we're never going to get good data with a marked police car there. So this silently captures that data so we can determine what's the best time to do enforcement, what's the best time to take initiatives out there to educate the particular people using the road during particular certain hours of the day. And it'll be a very useful and helpful tool for us to have to assist, because we can't have a police car everywhere, and it seems that the cars only slow down when we're there. So this gives us something that we can put out for more hours than a patrol officer could be there.
Yep, so that's it for capital and the signs, and then no warrant articles at the moment, correct?
Correct.
Except for, I think the alarms might come back, right?
Correct. I
What
believe they
might
will
come
come back.
The
Oh.
alarms,
Oh, okay.
right? Isn't that the alarm warrant?
False alarm bar law?
But false alarm bar law will be updated to include
Maybe, yeah.
fire alarms.
So,
I think I might have mentioned it, not when you were here, but I checked the other towns. And it was very prominent that Charlton just changed theirs, and it looked like a pretty good false alarm.
Yes, it's something that hasn't been captured, so we're hoping to get that in there.
It showed the different fines for the different offenses and all. It was nice. I think they just did it too, so it's timely that we're looking at it again.
It is, yes.
And we are getting a new motorcycle in Betterment.
right, if you had any questions on his betterment,
That was the new one.
2 cruisers, it says safe use.
And you're still getting 2 cruisers, right?
yeah.
Those Explorers, or?
They should be, yes. The only deviation that may be made, it's going to be a determination that's made at the last minute, is we may consider taking one of those cruiser purchases and possibly getting an equipped pickup truck that is marked as a cruiser. Ford has put out a cruiser package for that because we have a number of emergency management trailers down there. While the fire department has one pickup truck, we feel that between the boat the police boat transportation and the trailer transportation. The SUVs that we have aren't rated enough, at least for the trailers, to carry the trailers. They're not rated, the gross vehicle weight, so those are not compatible to being able to tow the larger emergency management trailers to scenes where we have to deploy all the equipment that's inside those, to include the UTV. So it would make sense to have a pickup truck. We've asked for a pickup truck before, but we'll make that decision when the fiscal year rolls through, and it's not going to be any more cost than what we've budgeted for a marked police
Can you
car.
imagine, I saw one on Central Street in Southbridge a couple of months ago.
Southbridge
A pickup
has one,
truck was all
right.
marked up, Southbridge Police.
Right, that can have a dual role as a patrol vehicle when needed, but not for transport, and it would eliminate the need for, you would probably not have a computer in it. It would be more so just as a utility service vehicle for moving those equipments, but you wouldn't want it sitting stationary for too long, because it tends to be worse for the vehicles to be sitting there in the parking lot.
Were you able to get us any information about, excuse me, about, bless you, detectives?
As far as who has them and who doesn't, it's easier to say that there are more that have them than don't. So really, there's not an agency, but then again, the hardest part of calling around, it's easy to say they all have them. Very minimal amount of departments that don't. However, it's some departments that may have the same number of people that we have. It's how they allocate their personnel. And I feel that the type of mission that we have, the type of services and the workload that we have in Sturbridge, that right now the patrol assets and the personnel that we have assigned, in the way that we have them assigned to the specific shifts, meet the allocation needs that we have currently. And to take away from any of those aspects is certainly going to put pressure on somebody else. In the past, we've taken the same number of people since about 2001, and we've moved it around in different ways to try to accommodate what we have to do and to make ourselves more efficient, or as efficient as we can be. Since that time, back then, it was a chief and 3 sergeants. Now you have a chief, 2 lieutenants, and 3 sergeants. And we didn't add new people. So those lieutenants were pulled essentially up from the sergeant's ranks, and the sergeant's ranks were backfilled with patrol officers. So we essentially lost 2 patrol officers, and one of those patrol officers could have been a detective's position.
So how much time do you lose every week, for instance, when someone has to go to Dudley District Court?
You know, there's just too much involved in, it would take me several months to do a proper analytical study of a workload case workload for each officer. Each officer that has to spend the hours in court, traffic accidents,
Yeah.
motor vehicle stops, arrests. It's just, it's not how, and I know traditionally it's, well, how big's the town, how many police officers you need. It really boils down to the uniqueness of your department, and how many initiatives do we have that are ongoing? How many services do we provide to our community? And what each one of those services comes a workload, and a workload for an individual officer. So the fact that, you know, that we're doing house checks, or that we're running residential area checks by a certain frequency and expectation of each officer, you know, that is a certain piece of information that would have to be collected to determine how much time each officer spends on each function. And the officers really rarely have discretionary time in their shifts to go and decide, well, I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here, and doing this. But to give you an idea, a simple arrest for an event, let's say if somebody gets stopped for operating without a license or after suspension, and their car is unregistered or uninsured, and they get arrested for it for whatever reason, the report, the time that entire stop, from the beginning of the stop until the time that all the paperwork and arrest paperwork is completed, is probably 2.5 hours, just for one event. like that. An OUI arrest, a little more complex, a little more involved, is probably from start to finish with all the reports in processing of evidence is probably closer to 4 hours of that officer being off the road. You get into even the minor investigations with the shoplifting, between the initial report, the investigative actions that have to be taken, that could take an hour and a half to 2 hours of an officer's time. If you have a break and entering on a street in your neighbor's house, between the canvassing and the initial investigation of a single investigating officer, that's a couple of hours' work initially. Then our officers are required on any open investigation to reach out to the victims and conduct additional steps. Every week, they're supposed to follow up on that case until that case is closed or suspended, meaning that they have to continue to work on it until they reach an end and they've exhausted all investigative opportunities to either solve it or determine that it can't be solved and have to put into suspension because maybe there might be some evidence that comes along. So it would take a while to try to put together the numbers for how many hours it takes out of each day.
Well, one of the things that I look at, and it concerns me from the officer's perspective, is if they're putting in a tremendous amount of overtime, what's the impact on their health and on their personal life with their family if they're never home because they're working all these hours? And I know that to a point, overtime is great. I used to,
It
You know, when
is,
I worked overtime,
right,
money
it
was
is, but
great,
I'll
but
tell
after
you,
a while,
it's
you know,
tough to get anybody to
oh.
work the overtime in that capacity. Our officers will stay over to get things finished in an hour or 2 hours each shift. However, it may be something that's not pressing and has to be picked up their next day of service. So already they're behind on whatever their days of, if they have to finish up Monday's work on Tuesday, then they're already behind, as you well expect, for the rest of the time. I'm sorry, Mike.
I had a question about, do your officers fill out like time allocation reports? I mean, do they put down 3 hours?
It's kind of funny how I thought about that when after we last met, and I have to laugh because we used to do activity sheets when I first started,
Yeah.
and we'd have to submit at the end of patrol shifts about all the business checks that you did, about the motor vehicle stops that you had, and what time they occurred, and what time you cleared from them. And it was long before the computer-aided dispatch systems that we had today. But just filling that stinking thing out by the
Well,
time
maybe
you work, it was an extra half an hour of your day, making sure that was accurate because you didn't want the sergeant to come back and find that you didn't have enough information on there or that wasn't properly filled out. So,
Doesn't need to be that granular, but you could just say, I spent an hour on patrol, I spent an hour, 2 hours on arrest, 3 hours, filling out paperwork, I don't know, just to keep, it seems like the data that you need, could be easily reportable, or you can look at a dashboard and figure out, how much your department is spending.
and really, it could be done, and it could be done that simply. It's just a matter of setting it up and
Yeah, I mean, it's
having
gonna
people
take some.
They all have
participating.
computers now in the car, though.
They do, but we could set,
Set something up on a computer that,
Yeah, there's a lot of software that would allow you to report out those, at least by hour, maybe by 1 hour blocks, not every 5 minutes, but.
and we could break it down too. We could take the number of our arrests that we have a year and take an average of how long that arrest takes and multiply those, as well as the accident reports, the number of accident reports, and the number of hours that each one of those reports takes.
And that has to be done in a way so it's not onerous to provide the data, but the data it could be useful to you for planning purposes, and you can make a good case, like, well, I have, officers that are spending, 45% of their time on, doing arrests or doing, in court or something like that.
And it would be great, and the only negative I would have with that is that it changes. Every year is going to be different because one year we may have more accidents, another year we may have more drug arrests, another year we may have more house breaks, and one event may dominate another, which may skew the numbers that we need to try to determine the accurate workload. And I think that there's got to be somebody that's already worked out this science,
Yeah, the software
and it's out there.
exists,
Software.
yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be by 15-minute blocks. It could be, I fill out a time card every 2 weeks, and I say, like, spent this much time on this project, this much time writing a report, you know, or working on a proposal. They're all different, like charge numbers, and so maybe I have 7 or 8 that I have to allocate, you know. But you probably do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't the primary interest in how much time is being spent doing the job that a detective could be doing? Wouldn't it really be only interested in time spent on an investigation, meaning that's time away from patrols and such?
For that one position, yes. Yes, and that can already be justified just by the day-to-day operations. You know, if you start taking some of that, just the investigatory data away from it, you can justify that full-time position with the follow-ups, the lab, the trips to the lab, the consultations with the district attorney's office, the follow-up investigations. There's so much to just that one position, and you know, it's going to relieve the pressure by 40 hours on the work that's being done by the members that are out there now. And will that be sufficient, and what will backfill those missing hours from those 40 that are captured? What will we fill those 40 hours with of patrol activities, and what will they be allowed to do? But it'll certainly, any additional person that's helped take some of the workload away is obviously going to relieve the pressure off of somebody else that's on, you know, a given shift.
And I like data, but I'm just wondering what I would do with a bunch of data after we spend time jotting this down, because it's going to come down to, well, we had X number of, you know, this type of events, and on average they were 2.5 hours, and you know, here's how much time we spend on that versus this. But each event is a little bit different. As you said, you might have you know, you don't control the number of events that you're responding to out there. And so that will throw off your, you know, any math that someone would do against those averages. And in the end, as you said, if you're bringing this detective and they're taking someone's investigative work away from other officers, you know, typically we're going to say, well, great, now we're reducing. What are we reducing there, right? Well, we're doing with our free time. We're going to reduce one of those offices. We're back to where we started. You're just going to redirect them to some other activities. And it might simply be more driving around doing neighborhood patrols, being visible in neighborhoods than you do now. And, you know, there's a value to that.
Well, then there's a value and effect to that,
So,
right?
or you're going to redispatch them to do something else. You know, unless the data says, well, you know, you don't have enough time to do investigations because you're doing this task, and we don't place a lot of value on those tasks, so cut those activities back and redirect it to investigative time instead of hiring a new person. That's the only thing the data would help us with.
And I think to that point, and we've had discussions on, you know, say the overtime budget. You know, it's hard to say, well, you know, you can reduce the overtime budget with additional people, right? When, in this case, since we don't have the detective, you've got other offices spending 4 or 5 hours at Dudley Court. You're going to have to perhaps tap into the overtime. I don't know, but I'm assuming that sometimes you might, in case you are that short-handed, right? So even if you had the detective there, who's to say that you still wouldn't need that overtime budget? And I only say that because a lot of times, you know, if I like, not to pick on other departments, with the fire department, when we brought on the extra, when we funded the extra positions, we kind of reduced that overtime budget, but it really didn't work out to be apples and apples.
I agree.
You know, because anything can happen. I mean, you hear on today might be quiet, but tomorrow might be a, you know.
Yeah, you can have a major event where you need,
Yep.
you know, your staff, everybody, you can get all on hands 24 hours a day for a week or multiple days for some large event in town that's supplemented by state police and others, but you still need to bring people there. Well, your overtime budget's shot. Or you got an event that's eating a big bite out of it that was unforeseen.
And new people bring new sick time and new vacation time, new holiday
That's
time
true,
that
too.
all needs to be filled as
That's
well.
true, too.
Do you have a court officer? I
We-
sort of
we-
recall you had one at one
We
point.
do,
and
we
that
do have
person-
we do have a full-time court officer, and that's a full-time position that really serves minimally contributes to the patrol.
So when she was asking about officers doing arrests and going to court, they're not,
They're just going to testify on cases that they've been summoned to appear in court off of previous arrests.
Okay.
The court officer's job's a separate job that is required to be a full-time job just because of the mandates that the judicial system has
so
put
it's not
upon
like
them.
they're the officer that goes and testifies, you still have to have.
Oh, no.
No, the one thing that the court officer does do, though, with respect to that, is the court officer does handle the hearings, the motor vehicle appeal hearings for the department, and some of the prosecutorial hearings for summonses that are maintained. And usually, until it goes in before the judge, that's when the officers have to appear themselves.
At the Saturday meeting, you identified 3 areas of additional support you'd like to have. Extra dispatchers, the detective, I think 1 or 2 extra officers if possible. I thought we had asked if you can come up with some budget costs for each one of the, I know you prioritize them for us. Then were you able to come up with some ballpark costs for?
I have
what it would take to
ballpark
fill any of
costs,
those?
I have ballpark costs in my head, but Joni and I spoke earlier. I can present an actual budget, if you would prefer, that addresses the number of dispatchers and the patrol officers and dispatcher, in the detective's position. But
I don't know,
looking for
because, I mean,
ready to go there
looking-
now. I think we're
No,
trying
but
to
you
get an
want
idea.
salary and
I don't know what
other
the costs are
right?
gonna be as far as for the healthcare and the retirement and those aspects. Salary-wise, 2 police officers will be approximately, not overtime or any of the other, they're probably gonna be, with equipment, et cetera, probably $100,000 a year each,
Not including benefits.
not including the benefits. That's just
Add 35%.
approximately 75,000 in salary, and then 25,000 equipment and training, and the shift differentials and the other associated costs that may go. And for the dispatchers, similarly, it would be approximately 50,000 per dispatcher, with the associated costs of training to be included afterward. That's just for salaries.
And that's, when you say 75,000 for salary, they don't come in at that salary.
Yeah.
No, that's anticipating that they.
Everything anticipated in the
Right,
contract,
that they would be
right?
coming in with.
That's a steady state, long-term cost of filling.
That's why,
They get the uniform allowance and they get.
right, that's throwing in all the
training and that.
benefits of the contract into that number.
So that's the
which would
contract,
push
but
it
that's
up
not
to
like health insurance or.
Not including health or retirement.
Health
And
insurance.
and you'll say one detective position is about 100,000.
Correct.
We could
yes.
probably get those, health insurance from Barbara. It seems to me we got them last year. I think it's, X numbers for a family or an individual.
Right, right.
In a dispatcher's position would
30%
probably more,
Rule of thumb.
between salary and those benefits, would probably more about 65,000 per dispatcher, with the benefits that come with the contract.
'Cause you got pension costs.
I would add another 15 on top of what their salary would be, and that's estimating somebody coming in at top dollar for the dispatch position.
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
The dispatch, it was 50 plus what?
About 15 in associated costs with respect to the contract.
And those dispatchers are full-time or part-time?
Full-time.
2 full-time
Yes.
positions, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't want you to spend the time putting together a budget on that one. I think that's good enough for my purposes. I think you still need the, Leon, the Board of Selectmen, as well as us, to agree that at least one or more of those roles should be filled and we can come up with the money for the incremental costs. And once we agree that, we can afford around, X dollars a year more in our budget to plug one of those holes, then we can worry about the specifics of the budget.
Well, please understand that it's nothing new. It's something I've been asking for since my
Yeah.
very first budget in fiscal
Yeah,
'07.
that's why in my mind, while I tend to be data-driven and I'd love a bunch of numbers, I'm sitting here saying, this is, we just need to, get comfortable that, the staff that you have is out there, it's working. There are times where it's overworked and there are some kind constraints, and you're doing a balancing act, on each shift and each day out there. And if we accept that premise, that we could offload some of your patrol work onto work done by your patrol team there to do, to the detective or fill something else.
And we also
But
have-
that will then have them more time to focus on other activities that we feel need attention, that aren't being addressed, at a level we expect today.
And aside from that, Chief, do you have any safety concerns? I mean, if you have people out there and someone's tied up and another event occurs, it seems to me there are situations where you need more than one officer responding to a situation. And if you
Well, it
don't have
doesn't-
that
it-
officer,
right, it
you're
doesn't stop.
endangering the safety of that officer.
And there's another data set that needs to be looked at, is how many times are we calling outside agencies, much like the fire department does for mutual aid. How many times are we calling other agencies for assistance for calls?
Right.
While we've traditionally, in all the years I've been here, relied on the state police for assistance, they themselves also have the burden of the highways and some of the smaller towns that they have to respond to, so they're not always going to be available. We rely on our neighbor departments for assistance when that time comes, and we've utilized that as well as they rely on us. So, there is certainly a very serious safety concern, but the officers are just going from one call to another call to another call, and our officers are, they're going to go to a call if they have to, but if they've got the time to wait for assistance to go there, then they will. And, we don't want them putting themselves in harm's way out there unnecessarily, and,
Or anyone else for that matter.
right.
Right. And I can say to that, having had an experience, that we needed police help at our place of business, Flea Week, and nobody was available. So it went to the state, dispatch, and they were a half an hour getting to our place. When that person finally did arrive, the state police, I can tell you that she had at least 2 other calls right then and there when I was talking with her, and the problem was just really bad at that point, right? I mean, it wasn't life-threatening or anything like that, but it was still a need that we had that took an hour to resolve between 2 police
Unfortunately, that
departments.
doesn't happen very often.
I know that it's Flea Week and all that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that may have experienced that over time, and it's only been once.
But we do plan for this, for the Flea Week. We do put extra
Right.
patrols on, on overtime to try to provide those extra services during those peak times.
Oh, and it's not a criticism, by the way. I just know that, the help is,
No, and I appreciate that, but the safety issue is always of importance, and I can remember stripping the police department down where there was only one patrol officer here, going on the road just to save some money for the budget over the years, and fortunately that doesn't happen. But having been here as long as I've been, they're still running 2 police officers on the shifts, as a minimum manning. I try not to let it go be below 3, but. As we discussed earlier, there used to be a day when you could determine and pick when was going to be your busiest times and when it wasn't. The summer times were always busy before all the lakes had houses that were permanent over there. They were all temporary, and our town would really explode in the summertime. And now our business is pretty steady, 12 months out of the year, and there's really very minimal fluctuations except for certain holidays. And so we have a steady flow of business and a steady business base that, really does put a different burden. If it was seasonal, I would take care of it with seasonal help, and we would address it, and we would handle it as it comes in. But that's not the case. It's constant and it's steady, and I don't think it's going to let up. And as you've read in the manpower proposal, we haven't had any increases in quite a long time.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's not that I haven't asked for it. It's not that it hasn't been planned for. It's not that it hasn't been mentioned in previous planning tools that the town has commissioned. And I don't know what it's going to take. If it's going to take some critical incident, if it's going to take a failure or a breakdown for it to happen, it'll be unfortunate if that's the case. However, I think that we really need to take not just with my department, but with other departments, take a really strong, proactive stance on manpower proposals and stick to the plans that we put in place and work with those plans to make sure that those needs are there and to try to establish some studies that we can use that really do point out the workloads that we have for each one of our departments.
I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
And then- Sorry. I know this is fairly small, and I know I ask it every year. The marijuana civil filing fee, would that be going away with the recreational marijuana being allowed now?
No, not necessarily, because there are still bylaw violations that are going to
Oh,
occur
yes, that's
for-
right, we have
for
bylaws.
the quote-unquote
Open-
open container,
Open smoking in public.
minors,
And minors are
et cetera.
still.
So there'll still be bylaws. So
Right.
there'll still be bylaw fines, so there'll still be the filing fees for the court for
Oh,
that.
okay.
And we'll take a look at that, you know.
It
if
might
we
go
s-
down a bit.
Right, if we see over the years that, you know, that there's half of that every year,
Hmm.
then we're gonna cut that in half because we're not using it anymore. And it's not that that money doesn't get returned.
Right,
It's just that
well,
we
yeah, I
know
know.
it'll help us better budget it
Right.
in the future.
Right. And just one other question on the school resource officer. When that position was first brought in, well, the thinking was that the person would service all three schools, and I think, if I remember right, it was going to be a third of the time at each school. If Tantasco was to accept a school resource officer, would your thinking still be the same, or would it?
No, my thinking has changed on that, and I see how the program has worked, the school resource officer program has worked at Burgess. The officer that we have assigned to that, Officer Dadalt, has become so integrated and part of the Burgess community that I think it would really be detrimental to the entire community of Burgess Elementary School to remove her from her full-time assignment over there and take her away, take 2/3 of her time away and put her elsewhere. And I don't think that it would adequately serve the needs of the entire district. I think that the Tantasco community needs their own school resource officer up there, their own position. I think that there are 4 other communities that participate in the district. I think that we could take a team approach to assisting the officer that's assigned up there, meaning that the Wales Police Department, the Brimfield Police Department, Holland Police Department, Brookfield Police Department would all contribute to assisting the officer that's up there with their own school resource officer that they have, that they're servicing their elementary schools with, and interchange their teaching, interchange their services, that whenever they're required, they're responding and backing each other up so that the school resource officers from all 5 towns are interacting, developing a plan that's consistent for all the elementary schools, that's standardized across the Union 61 district, so that the responses to Brimfield Elementary are no different than the responses to Burgess, and no different the responses to Wales, and that all these officers have become so familiar with each other that we are able to share those resources between the communities for 'cause all these children are going to end up at the Tantasco Junior and Senior High School. So I think that the one school resource officer up there working collectively with the other towns would be the better model up there right now.
Do the other elementary schools have resource officers?
Not full-time, no, but I'm sure that, I know that each department has
They do have
police
someone that-
presence for different programs in their elementary schools.
So they do have someone at least on
So
a,
the police departments themselves are participating in functions of different levels for each one of the communities, but my vision is to try to get them to designate somebody that would be, or, designate something to the schools at that level.
The Burgess SROs, is their salary and expenses included in your budget or the Burgess budget?
In our budget.
Mike, you had questions?
Yeah, I was just curious, if you need backup help outside the department, is it the state police the first backup, or is it the?
It depends the location.
Yeah,
If we're up at the school, it's usually Brookfield. It depends where in town. It could be Charlton, if we're closer to that side.
they can't make arrests, though, because of, is there jurisdictional issues?
No, there are no jurisdictional issues. We belong to the Central Massachusetts Law Enforcement Council, or SEMLEC. You've heard some of the different participations we do with the motor unit and the SWAT team, the Accident Reconstruction Unit of SEMLEC. SEMLEC, the mutual aid agreement that we have that's county-wide or SEMLEC-wide provides for the jurisdictional issues that each officer, each community that's a member, the officers from those communities, while they're on duty, have jurisdiction in each one of the communities that are represented by SEMLEC. So there are no jurisdictional issues surrounding us,
Okay,
with the exception of Wales and Holland, who, if the school resource officer program was to go into place the way that I envision it, that we would enter into a mutual aid agreement with those communities as we have with the other communities. They're in a different county, but we would certainly be willing to develop a mutual aid agreement that would work for the Union 61 district.
what about the state police? Do they have, where do they, are there any boundaries of what they can do and can't
No.
do? Okay.
No. No, and they do get called more often than not, as a lot of the activities that occur are centrally located in town, and the state, it's usually who's the closest and fastest that can get there.
Yeah, no, I happened to call the state police barracks the other night, and they put me on hold because they were dealing with a domestic situation. Yeah, I guess over the phone, but I was just curious if they would get involved in something like that.
Well, it depends, it depends, we've been tied up, 2 patrols tied up at a domestic, and, a burglar alarm's going off, or a holdup alarm could be going off at Applebee's, and, we have to send whoever's the closest that we
Right.
can,
Okay.
we'll either send another community or the state, whoever's got somebody available.
All right, but in terms of the high school, though, just last question. So there isn't, I thought once we decided that the person who's a resource officer had to be one of our employees because it was
Well,
on our
that would be the
property.
case. The officer that would be assigned there would be a Sturbridge police officer. However, the burden of the school resource officer program in and of itself would not fall wholly on the town of Sturbridge, in my opinion. I think that it should be a shared resource and service that other communities participate in, because it's a very large campus up there between the 2 schools, and I don't think that one individual officer should be responsible in its entirety. That one officer could manage the other departments coming in and assisting with the different programs that they would be participating in, and the different, it's not just about investigations, but it's about providing different types of services and being a conduit for those services, if you will. So if there's a student that's from Wales, well, we want to make sure that our partners from Wales are available, and that we could seamlessly interchange that police service, that welfare service type of event for those people without having to disrupt too much of the day of that school resource officer up at Tantasco.
All right, thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Anybody else?
Can I just make some comments?
Sure.
Did you have something to ask? So just a couple of things. His contract, by the way, as far as the salaries, nobody brought up, but it is in, I guess, executive session, and hopefully, it sounds as if it's going to get ratified, or whatever the term is. Just wanted to throw that out there. I'm actually very happy that he has this 3-year contract, because I know he's been after it for a while, and I'm just happy that something did happen, because I was afraid when we got into this budget year that another year would go by and nothing would happen. So I was happy to hear about that, and I hope, we get some good news on that, right? Regardless. And, if anyone has any questions, we talked pretty thoroughly about, the details behind, the comparisons and whatnot, and it was an eye-opener for me, actually. I was surprised. That's all I'll really say to that. As far as the manpower goes, so I know there's really not a whole lot that we can do in this budget year, right? But a couple of points to make. this wasn't submitted, right, Tom, officially, even though every year you
The
have...
manpower proposal was submitted.
Oh, it was submitted,
This,
okay.
the three-page document was submitted. The only thing I didn't submit was, for a few years, I was submitting dual budgets. That would have been real easy for me to pull out the second budget. And then I just stopped
right.
doing it because it would get pushed aside and was never
Mm-hmm.
used. And we were instructed, as all the departments were, to provide the level service budget, which we did.
Mm-hmm.
And that if we had any changes or any requests, to put them down separately, and that's what this was for, and that's what I submitted with my budget.
And that's different from what we used to see in this column. That's the only point I want to make. Like, we would have seen that
Right.
data in this column, which is what the column is supposed to be for. And it's a shame that it
And I
wasn't in
think
there.
that, are you talking the department's recommendation column? Well, that column now is reserved for just a percentage increase for the level service. And that's what goes in there, is because it is an increase because of contractual obligations and other associated costs of equipment and contracts that, for services that go up. So that's what that column has become. That's level service, but it's considered, what we've requested, when it's really
So,
not.
Tony, I think in the past, that column has been, what is your request? What's your wish list? Put it in there, and then the town administrator's column will kind of reflect that level funding, if that's its goal. My thought was this year, the message was given, we're just looking for level funded budgets, so don't put all those other wish list items in there. Just put, somebody may have one or two items that have been discussed that are above level funded and knew they would put them in.
Right, but historically, for as long as I've been on the committee, the numbers were quite different, and everything that was requested was in that column. And it was a very, very helpful tool when we would sit down and talk with the department heads to know, but now, it was a good conversation starting point, let's just say, and it was an eye-opener, and it was cause for good discussion. Sometimes I think that's lost now. I personally would like to see everything that they would like, because that's what we're here to do, is talk about it. So
That's our mission.
that's our mission. So this, manpower, there's not a whole lot we can do. I did tell Tom that I'm happy to keep it out there and make sure that it gets discussed next budget season. Maybe it's something that it can be worked a little bit harder in the 5-year forecast, perhaps. We're talking about essentially a detective and a full-time dispatcher, which sounds to me like, and we didn't touch upon that too much tonight, but sounds to me like we really need that to accommodate the new state laws. Is that right? You have to have 2 dispatchers there, and there's still a little,
As I recall, to
Area
cover
that-
724, we needed
That's
8.5 dispatchers, I think, was
So
the
that
number
needs to
you
be
gave us a
addressed.
couple of weeks ago at the 8.5. And I think, what do we have, 5?
We have 5 full-time dispatchers now, so we would need 8 or 9 full-time dispatchers
Right.
to
To
cover
cover
24.
2 per shift,
2
7 days a week.
dispatchers per shift. And
so, we're talking,
that doesn't include the lead dispatcher position, so that would be in addition to that.
and so monetarily, we're talking a fair amount of money, which really needs to be forecasted, which I'm surprised, well, I guess I shouldn't say that. I don't think it's been forecasted appropriately in the 5-year plan. I could be wrong, I'll take a look, but I think it's something that absolutely should be until it's
And
satisfied.
remember, the town was contemplating regionalizing dispatch and going in with other communities, which would have taken care of this issue. It would have certainly put enough dispatchers to satisfy the needs that we had. But that didn't happen, so now we have to do something to put it together.
Is that now a moot issue, or can that be revisited?
I don't know, I mean, where we're at with the last discussion, we're out of that, yes. But we don't know if it's gonna come up again, we don't know if there's gonna be monies available for us from the state, I don't know how the state's gonna look upon us a second time around, if it will, but I hope that we don't see the day where the state pushes us into a place that we have no choice to go to and regionalizes for us. And that's For the 911 the 911 calls, we may be able to run our own dispatch center independently, but the 911 calls may be going someplace else.
Yeah. But just as a matter of curiosity, what did Southbridge and Charlton do? Did they go with the regional dispatch, or did they stay independent? Do you know?
Southbridge stayed away, and I don't know where Charlton is at with their discussions. But right now, Southbridge has full-time dispatching for fire and EMS out of the fire department, and they have full-time dispatch for police out of the police department.
Now, our dispatchers do both, correct?
Correct.
They field both, that's the other thing, you know,
Well,
they've got
all
a,
three, fire, police, and EMS.
yeah, so they need to know a fair bit, right? So, just,
Anything else?
Great. Thank you for the time.
Thanks for coming
Thank you,
in.
Chief.
Thanks very much.
I will shift to Chief Carasso, who does double duty, both the building and the
That's mine.
fire department. Let's see,
yeah.
fire department is, I think, page 24. Yes.
Fire,
Good evening.
hello,
Tried to order some warmer weather, but my phone died.
you failed.
Yes,
So,
we all wish.
Supposedly this weekend.
so page 24, again, as you heard, well, although the fire department has a fair bit of increases, but I think we're still getting a little organized, right, with in the purchase of services. There are still increases, well, a fair bit of increase in medical, the ambulance supplies and all that, and medicines and stuff,
Yeah, that's
which is uncontrollable.
just, it's a non-regulated industry, and, coupled with the fact that our call volume is increasing, and the nature of the calls we're responding to, the percentage of calls where we need more equipment or more supplies is increasing as well.
I mean, those were the biggest jumps that we talked about. One of the good things that I'm hoping that you can talk more about are the new positions under the SAVER grant. And what that, and they're 36 months, and then, what happens after that kind
Right.
of thing, and,
So the grant is a 36-month award, and basically it pays the entry-level salary for 4 positions. It will cover a portion of the contractual increases, but there's a fixed amount to the grant. The award was in the $800,000 range. From the federal government, the town's matching portion over the 3 years was about $500,000. What that's going to allow us to do, right now, we have 2 or 3 personnel on duty at a time. So when a second ambulance call comes in, or a second emergency call comes in, we're calling in people on overtime. And what this is going to allow us to do is have 2 full crews ready to go, so that when the first ambulance crew goes out, the second call is already going to be covered. We don't have to call people in. The other detriment we have right now is when we have to call somebody in, if we can't, we have to pass that call to mutual aid town. So we're losing the revenue from that call, and it's costing us money to bring people in. So it's kind of we're getting hit twice, so to speak. And this will allow us to keep 4 people on duty 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, so that we can handle those first 2 calls. Now, obviously, at some point, we're going to max out on the number of calls we can handle at some point, at any time. 3, 5, whatever it is, no matter how many people we have on duty. But I think, based on the historical numbers, having 4 people, having 2 crews ready to go for those 2 calls will cover a majority of those instances. So
We only have 2 ambulances, right?
we only have 2 ambulances.
Mike?
So how often do you have 2 ambulance crews out servicing a call at the same time?
More often than you would think. I don't have the specific numbers, I can get those for you, but more often do you think, we keep what's called a multiple call log, so that we can track that, so I can get you those numbers. But it happens on a very, very regular basis.
Is that mostly daytime, middle of the night, not as much?
It's generally not in the overnight hours, but it does vary. It varies seasonally, and it varies by the day of the week. So, during the summertime, we're probably seeing an increase on the weekends. During the flea market weeks, we're seeing it during the week. During wedding times, in the fall, we're seeing it during the week and on the weekends. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. For example, we've been up on 84 in the Turnpike in the last month, probably 7 to 10 times for motor vehicle accidents. Significant motor vehicle accidents. Tractor trailers, rollovers, fatal accidents. There's just no way to predict, and then we can go a month stretched or 2 month stretch and not go up there at all.
Yeah, but if you end up going to UMass, you're out of service for 4 hours at least, I would guess, by the time you pick it up, get out there and...
Yeah, generally from the start of the call, if we have to bring them to the city, we're looking at somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours.
That's
minimum.
all, okay.
Yeah, minimum. And again, a lot depends on the nature of the call. If we have to decontaminate the ambulance, if we have to, disinfect it, then we're out of service for a longer period of time. And with Harrington reorganizing some of what they do, for example, they closed our labor and delivery department, it's requiring us to go to the city more and more.
Do you have a question?
Yeah.
ahead.
Two questions. What percentage of calls do we respond to that are calls for mutual support from other towns, roughly? And two, how often do you have to pass up on those because we're already committed, and what kind of a lost opportunity does that mean?
I can get you the exact numbers. Roughly, we're doing, our mutual aid calls to other towns, us going to other towns, is increasing much more than the calls for service we're bringing in mutual aid companies. Although our increase is probably around 17% annually. But I can get you those numbers as well. When we did the rate increase proposal back in, I guess it was in the fall, I had all those numbers in a spreadsheet, and I can get you a copy of that.
Well, not just the rate increase, but the baseline. Is it 1 out of 3 calls are for mutual support, or I don't really have a baseline?
As far as how many times we're going out, or as far as how many times we're coming in?
How many times we're going out for other towns versus?
I'd say 20%
Sturbridge?
right now. 1 out of 5 calls, we're going out to Holland, Wales, Charlton, Southbridge, once in a while the Brookfields.
And have you? And how often would you have to not be able to respond to those mutual calls for support?
To the other towns?
Yeah, because we're tied up.
Well, one of the issues that I was faced with was the response policy of, if I have an ambulance crew in my firehouse and a mutual aid call comes in, how do I justify sending them out of town before I have coverage coming back? So we've had to jockey and shuffle our personnel and our procedures so that we make sure this town is covered for as much as we can cover it before we'll send somebody out. Now, that doesn't mean we don't respond. We're obligated to respond because we are a licensed ambulance. But internally, I have procedures now in place where I make sure we have station coverage almost at the same time that ambulance is heading out of the town.
Chief, if there's an accident on the Turnpike or 84, do we get called first, or are we backing up other, is it based on the boundaries of the town around the Turnpike?
Yeah, pretty much anywhere in Sturbridge, if it's the state police is gonna go first more often than not.
Yeah.
But if it's a motor vehicle accident, or a sick person, anywhere within the boundaries of the town, we're going to it.
Okay. So does the state police have their own ambulance service?
They
or
do
no?
not. They
Okay.
would respond
So
with
they
a
would go-
patrolman
they were as a patrolman, then
Yep.
they would call us to
Yep.
respond with the medical, okay.
Yeah, and we have a very good working relationship with the state police as far as the highways are concerned.
Okay, thanks.
Now, these new employees, does the grant cover their uniforms, any contractual benefit, I guess?
The grant does cover their training.
Oh,
So when they have to go to the fire academy, that's considered part of their workday, and that the grant funding does provide for the payment of those salaries.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but very little, it doesn't cover benefits. I have to
Well,
check
more
on
like
that.
contractual benefits
Yeah.
than, say, the health insurance or retirement, but like the uniform.
Well, one of the caveats that it does have is you cannot use grant funding to pay a grant-funded position overtime to replace another grant-funded position, if that makes sense. So they kind of make sure that you're not playing that shell game and, double dipping into the funds.
Right, yeah, I could see that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is a 4-year grant program, is that what it is?
36 months.
36 months, 4 new. So if 36 months from now, what is our,
Game plan?
what is our net gain?
So-
Is anyone approaching retirement, or?
I have to
Are we
back
gonna
up a
have
little
attrition?
bit. The grant funding began January 1st. We had a very, very difficult time finding qualified candidates. I now have 4. They're going to be going to the Board of Selectmen May 7th, I believe is the date for appointment. But the grant funding started January 1st, which means that in December of 2021, the grant funding ends. Obviously, the budget cycle before that, the town will have to determine whether or not they want to continue funding those positions. And that's a discussion we'll have to have as we get closer. I think that from an operational standpoint, from a service-related standpoint, it's going to be very easy to justify those 4 positions going forward.
But on top of that, are we looking at any retirements, or,
Oh, within, you
so
mean?
I'm looking for a
Right,
net
within.
amount. If we gain 4, are we gonna be
There
up
could
4 when
potentially
this-
be 1 or 2 retirements, age-out retirements.
Yeah, that's what I-
In the 3 years, yes.
But your intent in seeking this is to get 4 full-timers and maintain a staff level where you are today, plus the 4 positions from this
Absolutely.
grant.
Yes, absolutely.
Maybe Chief Ward could use some of your math there to justify 1 or 2 of his positions.
Well, on that, this is why it's going to be even more important to perhaps talk about all that in this book, not only just for the police, to make it people aware, but
Fire and
also for
police.
fire, because while we want a budget for the safety concerns on the police end, right, we have to do the same thing for you in the coming years, and that falls into that 5-year budget. Now, one thing that we talked about was span of control, right? So you have to factor in, he's going to have a larger force. So having perhaps, correct me, a deputy chief, that might also be something that needs to be addressed. And now's the time to talk about it. It's 3 years from now, a year for police, and I definitely think that it has to be seriously talked about, not just,
Well, I
you know,
I think we owe that to the taxpayers,
Right,
so they know what
right.
they're gonna
Which-
get for their money.
which is why I'll happily mention it here, and perhaps it's something that the committee can put in their findings at the end of the
Keep saying
budget
here
season.
because this is the finance committee
Doesn't-
report.
This really does matter to us.
I
So-
should be writing this down as one of our possibles?
I already did.
Ah,
But it's something that, I want the committee to understand. It's not just hiring these 4 people permanently. It's funding for them at the end of 36 months, and then also the need to look for this additional, deputy at
Yeah,
some
and
point.
again, similar to what Chief Ford has said, our industries are no longer those part-time industries that they were 25, 30 years ago. We're constantly on the move with anything and everything. I say all the time, we don't take cats out of trees anymore, but we do. We take cats out of trees. It's just something else. It's not a cat in a tree. It's, you know, whatever.
And then the increased activity on 84 and the Pike are also probably for the police as well. But I know recently,
Yeah.
you guys have been out there for a couple of serious accidents.
Yes.
3 or 4 that I can think of in the past month. Which brings me to, I guess, the capital, a discussion on capital where.
Before we go there, just a staffing
Sure,
question.
yeah.
So with this grant, I think you said you were going to now have two ambulance crews, 2 crews of 2 on duty 24 hours a day.
That's my intent. That's my plan, yes.
And what are we
There
going
is
to
some
have?
contractual issues that we have to iron out, but yes.
And what do we have for staffing on the fire side? Because I assume these are just ambulance, EMS.
Everybody's
these-
cross-trained. Everybody is cross-trained. So right now, when I have 2 people on duty, they're responding to whichever call comes in first, be it a fire call or an ambulance call. So if an ambulance call comes in, they go out and run the ambulance. Now I have to call people back on overtime to cover the firehouse, either for a second ambulance call or a fire-related call. If I have 4 people in the firehouse and that first ambulance call comes in, or if a fire call comes in, I still have support staff there to take that second call, whatever the call is.
Okay, so we were talking about them being EMS folks. They're cross-trained. They're also handling fire calls, if that's what.
All
comes
of
in.
my personnel are firefighters and either paramedics or EMTs. The majority of them are paramedics.
So overnight, you'll have 4 people on duty versus now you have 2, and when a call comes in, you
Right, and
have-
the other,
you're
the other
calling
thing
for
that's
somebody to
important
come
about
back
that is
and
when they do
backfill.
come in, they get a contract minimum. So they're getting paid for 4 hours. If they come in for a call and that call ends in, you know, an hour, they're getting a minimum 4 hours by their contract. So the cost is gonna be affected significantly.
But you're also putting them to work for those 4 hours, correct?
Yes.
You better be.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a conversation we had to have internally that we took
Well,
care
it'll
of.
make me think twice about answering that phone call at 2 in the morning.
Chief, could you give me an idea of what the barriers were to finding qualified candidates? Is it strictly compensation?
I don't know that it was compensation per se. Part of it was, these are grant-funded positions, and we have to, by federal law, publish that it's a grant-funded position, and that at the end of the grant, there may not be funding anymore. So I think that was one issue. There were people who were looking at this as a non-secure position. In addition to that, there were a number of departments that were hiring at the same time as we were trying to hire. And we began in July
For permanent positions?
for permanent positions. In fact, I had 2 conditional offers accepted and then rescinded because they both took permanent positions in other communities. And then the third factor was the number of paramedics is not that big. People, I don't know, understand that's the case. There are not an abundant amount of paramedics in the state of Massachusetts. And the town, up until a few months ago, wanted only paramedics to be hired. I did petition the Board of Selectmen and was granted approval to relax the standards temporarily to be able to hire an EMT, and then they become trained as paramedics. But I think that was the third thing. So we were really fighting against 3 things.
Thank you.
And I think 1 or 2 of the folks you got had that condition, right? Were hired.
All 4 of the grant positions now have to become paramedics within 2 years.
Right, within 2 years. So
2
all
of them are graduating in May from paramedic school. The other 2 will graduate next August or September. So August or September of 19, they will graduate. So well within the 2-year period.
Chief, do you anticipate any increase in calls for mutual support? Now, towns may know that Sturbridge has a second crew available on call.
I think our call volume is going to continue to rise. It doesn't matter that that we're gonna have a second crew. They're calling us, now for, like I said, 20% of our calls, to go mutual aid. And I think as our call volume increases and as we face this opioid epidemic and any number of other things, the aging populations, everybody's call volume is gonna increase and, we're gonna be helping others and others are gonna help us as much as, excuse me, as much as we need it.
Which is, and I was going to go to the capital kind of on that, because we have the ambulance stabilization request with regard to the ambulances. And that's new, right, Kath?
What?
This ambulance this year? Or is that,
No,
the
we've had
amount,
we've
the
had
amount is
ambulance-
different, right?
We've had the ambulance stabilization fund for quite some time.
There's a fire apparatus fund.
Was
that's
it
new.
always,
And then there's a fire apparatus fund that was
Right.
just started.
Yep.
No, we've
That's
had
the one that just
ambulance one for quite some time, and I don't,
Yeah.
can't
But
tell you
did
how
that
long.
Warrant
increase?
article. Warrant articles.
Stabilization
Yeah.
Well, the,
initially it
the
was a
fire,
warrant.
the ambulance is in the capital to a certain extent, at 175, but it will also be funded from the stabilization fund, as I understand it. Is that correct,
Is
Chief?
this about a
Yes.
second one?
So there's
replace the 2010 one.
approximately $135,000 in the stabilization fund.
Right.
The estimated proposal for the ambulance is $307,000. So the 175 bridges the gap.
And that is in the capital plan, the 175.
And that was the role of that ambulance stabilization fund, put $25,000 in a year, so when we have to buy a.
Well, it's more than that.
We've been putting
It's-
at least 50
I
in
think
there.
it's 40. I think it's
Yeah.
It's been 40, yeah.
You paid a little bit each year for the.
Right.
large-
We do, so we don't have that huge hit, but
And to my knowledge, there was an issue where an ambulance got totaled a few
Yes.
years ago.
so it
And
threw
that
us
kinda
off a bit.
threw off the time
The
table.
savings,
The ambulance we're looking to replace now was, we bought it in 2010, it was built in 2009.
Will the new apparatus be brand new model year?
Brand new, yes.
And what is the other truck?
The other,
Oh, no,
ambulance.
it's, yeah, apparatus, sorry.
We have an apparatus,
Yeah, that's for the safety complex, we can touch that, but the ambulance you're anticipating next year? When do you anticipate?
fiscal 19.
Fiscal 19. To purchase, I mean. Yeah, you are.
yes. Then, he also, in Betterment, you have firefighting gear too,
Yeah, so
and a
in,
drying cabinet.
in 2013, we were awarded a grant to buy firefighting turnout gear. The gear generally is recommended to be used for only 10 years. So instead of, in 2023, let me back up, a set of turnout gear is $3,500 to $4,000 now,
Each,
each set. So we're up to approximately 20 firefighters, so we're talking $75,000, $80,000. Instead of doing a capital request for $80,000 in 2023, in talking to the finance director and the town administrator, we felt that putting some money aside each year would be less of a burden on the taxpayers.
and would it always come from Betterment, or hopefully?
If we can make that happen,
Make
that
it
would be
happen.
ideal, sure.
So you aren't actually going to be buying it this year, it's just going to,
No, this is going to be an annual request. The 13.5 will be an annual request for the next several years until 2023, and then we'll, I would like to get on a replacement program and stagger it,
Right.
so that we're not replacing everything at the same time. The problem is, there's the philosophy is if it's good for 10 years, why are we replacing it in less than 10 years? We can't use it for longer
it's
than
good
10
for
years.
10, it's good for 20 in this
So
town,
now
I
we're,
think,
we're in that,
times.
that quandary, how do we do this?
Greg.
Yeah, Greg would know that.
Those 20, they're not all full-time, some of those are a call,
Correct. Yeah.
So again, overnight, you only have 2 people on duty. Now, you, with your grant, you're planning on having
We have,
4 people on
we
duty.
have 2 full-timers on duty, and at periods, I supplement a third portion of the shift with a part-time employee.
And how
So
about
there are
during,
times that we have 3 people working.
how about during the day? How many staff do you have on?
When I have Lieutenant Marinelli working, because he works an odd schedule, so he'll come in Monday at 7 a.m. He'll work until 3 p.m. as the fire inspector's position, and then at 3 p.m. he goes into the firehouse overnight till 7 o'clock the next morning. And then he works again 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. as the fire inspector. While he's working as a fire inspector, he does respond to calls, but his primary function is to do, fire inspector duties. So when he's working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I have that extra person because he's there. He's off Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So those are the days that I supplement with the part-timers. So I try to get that third person. I can't always get that third person to work, but I try to get that third person if I can.
So on a Wednesday morning, it's you, it's John Marinelli, an ambulance crew, two people in the ambulance crew, and maybe a part-timer?
No, that's it. Wednesday morning, you got myself, Lieutenant Marinelli, and 2 firefighters. Maybe another officer.
Okay.
Did you want to ask that?
Well, I noticed there's some differences between what you requested and the administrator recommended. Maybe I'll just take the biggest one, the radio communication equipment. What was the difference?
Are we talking the fire department or the public safety complex now?
Fire, we didn't hit.
Five still on fire?
You requested 13,000 and the administrator recommended 12.
That's vehicle maintenance.
Right.
Vehicle maintenance. We had a conversation about that, and the understanding was that this is really reserved, this account is really reserved for routine preventive maintenance and minor repairs. Anything catastrophic which would be unforeseen would probably qualify for an emergency reserve fund transfer. So I think we're pretty well within that $12,000
Okay, thank you.
we can operate.
For fire inspection, so you check like hotel rooms like periodically and new construction, residential?
Yes, so anytime a residential structure is sold, there has to be a smoke inspection by Massachusetts general law.
Yeah.
We do conduct annual inspections as required by the fire code, multiple occupancy buildings, the hotels, the restaurants, the schools.
Yeah.
So
Is it
yeah.
every single room in a hotel, or is it just a random? Do you do every room in a hotel? Like yeah.
Yeah, when we do a full inspection, we'll do every room in a hotel. Fortunately for us, we're in most of those rooms throughout the year anyways, for
Right.
one reason or another, but, yeah.
And what about Airbnb? Do you inspect those?
Airbnbs are not regulated. I think they're going to be in the near future, but it's very difficult to regulate a private residence.
Right, right.
You know, we have no inspection authority in a single or two-family residence.
Right.
And that's gonna be a legal debate that has to happen.
Do you even know what residences are Airbnbs?
I don't.
Unless you go on Airbnb?
I don't. I will say
I mean, there
this.
are some, and there's
quite a
definitely
few.
quite a few in Sturbridge, yeah, quite a
There
few.
was I will say this, there was a request, an informal request made of the town planner, and she asked me about it, and we did a bunch of research, and if they do formally change to an Airbnb or a B&B, the fire code kicks in, and it's an exorbitantly costly process to go through. They have to sprinkler the building, and so.
Oh, really? Oh,
And that's the problem we're gonna run into with the Airbnbs, because they're not regulated. Bed and breakfasts are, Airbnbs are not.
do you mean by the state?
Yes, by the fire code.
By the
yes.
fire code in the
Yeah,
state.
so you can have an Airbnb in your house. You don't have to tell anybody, but bless you, you don't have to tell anybody about it. But if you want it to be a quote-unquote bed and breakfast, then the fire code will kick in.
Does it make any difference if a renter is alleging violations of the fire code at the premises?
If someone makes a complaint to us, we have the authority to go and inspect it. In any structure. Yes.
Any other questions on the fire department? And he does double duty with the public safety complex.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, actually, just one before, next year is the contract year?
Now,
It's this
we're in contract negotiations now with the local,
So
yes.
these are anticipated based on the, based on the current contract?
Yes.
So these will not change?
Well, these will probably change, but
Right.
I can't tell you
So I just,
how.
yeah, so I just want to let that
Yeah.
be known to the committee.
So page 20 is the safety complex.
So our great safety complex, I will say that I absolutely drilled him on the washer dryer unit and the installation costs. After going through it, I guess it's valid, you know, I can't say anything about it, right? The washer dryer is needed. They have a different set of washing for their fire gear. This is strictly for their uniforms, et cetera, et cetera. If you recall, a few years ago, we used to have them sent out, right? So. this
Oh,
is-
right, yeah.
Right, and that's no longer there, and so hopefully this will be more cost-effective. The installation is a little bit pricey, because I guess we do have to go through,
They have to core
walls
through the
and stuff.
concrete in the main level to get the piping and the electrical up to, it's a janitor's closet,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And again, this is a budgetary estimate, so I'm cautiously optimistic it won't be as high as we're looking at.
and the only big difference really was the oil.
Yeah, that was a big jump.
It was a big jump, and after talking with Barbara, I guess I don't know if it was Saturday or if we had a different conversation, their bulk comes out of the different.
Yeah, from what I understand, ours is bid with the schools, and it's done a year in advance, and basically that cost figure is the amount of gallons we used in the last 365 days from when I did the budget, times the new rate, whatever the new bid rate was, and that's how that number is calculated.
That's a pretty sizable increase.
I think
It-
we
it
went
really
from,
is.
I want to say, and I don't know 100%, it was around, it was under $2 to over $2 a gallon.
And then, so I,
That's because we're buying it from other than, because all the other locations in town are either flat or down.
Yeah, and
They must be buying theirs on.
I'm not quite
contractual
certain
basis.
why it's done that way. It's done through central
I think
purchasing,
it has
but I
to do
end
with
up
the
having it
time
on
of
my
year that you
budget.
go out and get your proposal on what's happening in the market at that point in time. So
Well-
this just happened to go out at a time where prices bumped up a little bit and you're locking in for 1 year, you'll get a different price than if you waited 2 weeks and hope that things settle back down.
Yeah, but DPW, center office building, and the town hall are all level funded.
Yeah.
so they're in a different.
They're in a different contract?
Contract, a
Yeah.
different bulk, right? So
And
they're
that was
with
my
the school.
question.
Yeah, I know, and I forget exactly what Barbara specified, but if I'm not mistaken, the Tantasco went up as well, Kathy, right?
Yeah, I think it did, yeah.
Which makes sense. So they just probably got a bad deal,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
say.
But there's no issue with it. It's not leaking or anything like, 8 Brookfield Road used to, right? We used to go through oil like
Right.
crazy one
We
year.
did, yes.
But we do have a lot of things that have to be addressed with the safety complex.
Well, there's a bunch in the capital
Bunch
budget.
in capital. I mean, it is what it is. You've got, do you want to talk about them?
Yeah,
Yes.
I think we should preface it with, when I started here last year, it was, there was a feasibility study being conducted. It was the middle of a feasibility study. Unfortunately, I had about an hour's worth of time with the architect who was doing the study probably sometime in August. Never heard from that person again. And from what I understand from the town administrator, she's no longer working on the feasibility study, and we're not sure where that feasibility study is. That being said, the building is 30 years old, and
Maybe we have it.
maybe. The building's 30 years old, and it's starting to show signs of its age, and, you know, things that have to be done if we're going to continue to use the building in an appropriate manner. One of those items is to bring the fire alarm system up to current code. And that's going to require some additional wiring and some additional smoke heads and some additional notification devices. So that's that first budget, capital item, the upgrade of the fire alarm system for $16,000. When that building was originally done, there were no sleeping quarters on the fire side. So now things have, obviously, we have people sleeping. We did an addition to the dormitory, which means we have another room now that needs to have fire protection. And some of the stuff just needs to be upgraded as well.
So has it been upgraded since the place was
To
built?
my knowledge, there was some work done in 2014 or 15, but it wasn't done completely.
And when they built the dorm, because I remember the dorm was just, what, last year
Yep.
perhaps? They
Well, no,
didn't,
they added it for women, didn't they?
yeah, for the.
We
for the
added,
females.
a single dormitory so that we can have the flexibility of
Male,
splitting
female.
people up if we need to. So we have two single dorms now and a bigger dorm with three bunks in it.
And they didn't put fire system in when they built it, is,
Correct.
okay. Okay.
The rooftop cooling unit is the air conditioning unit for the building. It's original to the building, and it's seen its better days. I had Renaud HVAC out several times last summer to tinker with it and keep us somewhat tempered in the building.
After
And
20
they
years,
said,
it's borrowed time.
you need to replace it. So that's that
Well,
one.
it seems, the library is having their issues with HVAC.
Well, yeah, they're the
They've been
same.
ongoing.
They're like a year
The units
apart,
get
or
old.
they're the same year, or a year apart than when they were
Really?
built.
20 years, they start to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're off by a zero here, because the library fix is a $300,000 fix, and yours is only $25,000, so.
That's just the cooling part. That's their whole HVAC system.
Yeah, this cost is to purchase the unit, the crane to put it in place, and the service company to actually hook it up.
So what is it you're replacing, hooking up the whole unit, or just a part of the unit?
No, the entire rooftop air conditioning unit.
I was kind of going that same direction, Mike. I don't understand the huge disparity in costs between the library HVAC and this HVAC.
The library's all the ductwork too, I think, right?
I don't know, I don't,
And their heating system as well, both?
I think so.
I thought it was both heating and, that was
I
included
think,
that. I think it's,
in the safety complex, that's strictly air conditioning, I'm guessing, because you use oil for your heat.
We have, we have a.
The library, it's HVAC, so they're using propane for the heat.
that's propane, right,
So the
right.
unit on the, it's got a furnace and a cooling system in one unit, if it's a roof unit. It's-
But are they replacing the whole thing at the
Oh, yeah,
library? I thought it was just okay.
There was, where were they just
Still a
doing
big chart,
repair
big-
for a
big
couple of
difference.
years, and then they're gonna repair it later? Was that the center office building?
no, that was the
Was
library.
They're gonna do a patch job.
Yeah, we did a RFT on that, yeah. Yeah, maybe.
Do you use the same company, John?
I
as
don't know
that?
who the library uses.
I think the library uses somebody different.
Okay. They were, I
I
actually,
couldn't tell you who it was.
yeah, I can't, they were there just recently, and I just happened to see the
And I
truck.
think that it's because they've used them, and so they know their system.
Right.
Because I think they were trying to get, the same contractors for, different, for the everything. But I think that, I thought they said the one for the library was quite specific to that contractor, or that plumber, whatever they are, HVAC.
There's certainly something to be said for
Yeah.
that, that practice. They know the system. They
Right.
know where it,
See where it's an older system.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, yeah.
And the last capital request for 14,550, when the building was originally built, the codes were a lot different than they are today. So in the apparatus bay, all of the metal I-beams that hold the roof up, that come up through the concrete floor, have metal conduit coming through the concrete floor with electrical outlets secured to the I-beams. Well, those those conduits now, over the years from water and salt and chemicals, have rotted away, exposing wires. So it's become a safety issue. So this cost is going to be, bless you, to bring electricity from the top and drop it down, and to
cut
make
those off.
dead, those ones that are coming through the floor.
Now, I just have a question, actually. I was looking through the notes last year. Was there roof repairs done to the complex last year?
We had some water issues, I know, and there were a couple of more this year. There may have been some roof work done prior to my arrival.
Maybe that's what it was.
I don't know for certain.
I don't know.
And there's been a problem with that roof since the building was,
Right, I do remember, I don't know, maybe Chief Ford remembers, but we had the library repaired
that was recent.
at the same time that we had a small section of the safety complex
Oh,
repaired,
yeah.
didn't we? Wasn't that last year, or maybe it was 2
No, it
years
was
ago?
more than that. I
The
think it was more
library
than
was,
that.
they did some work on the library.
Must have been 2
last
years
year.
ago, if this is your
The
The
second
slate.
year.
They
And
did the
and
slate
thought the
last year.
town, did they do another building?
But I was the reason I bring it up, I was of the impression when it happened, I don't know, Tom, if you can remember, that it was more of a Band-Aid, that at some point the whole roof would be needing replacement or repair. Is that right? Yes. Yeah. So I don't know if that's something you want
To
to
look into that.
look into.
Yep.
And who knows what the study is, where the study
I
is
don't know where that is.
with the complex.
We should ask Leon that on Thursday.
Okay, I'll make a note.
Do you have any other warrant articles that you are bringing forward?
I think the only
Except the
potential
bylaw?
one is the alarm bylaw.
The alarm bylaw. So no any other money articles, except for the ambulance.
Correct.
Any other questions for Chief? Well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you ready to vote?
I am, yeah, sure. You want to wait? Sure.
Oh, sure. So Thursday, we have Leon and Barbara coming, and hopefully we can get through most of the rest of the budget. One question, do we want the school to come in? We haven't voted that yet.
Oh, so I was going to ask when, well, it's Larry, right?
Yes,
They usually do come.
yes, they do.
Really do.
Any people interested in hearing from them? Perhaps we get them next week.
I wouldn't mind,
Yeah.
to be honest. It's different going to their school committee meetings. You don't really get a chance to ask a lot of questions.
No, you don't, especially I think at Tantascwa. Well, because it's different towns and stuff, yeah,
Yeah,
so,
more Tantascwa than Burgess, yeah.
yeah. All right.
Yeah, I don't know, well, they made it clear at each of their public hearings, I don't know we'll get much new here, but it'll certainly give them an opportunity for those at home
Right.
that watch this show to understand, what the schools are proposing, assuming that they didn't get to those public hearings in advance of the meeting.
Yeah, there's not too many people at those public hearings, except us.
We get great
Yeah, the
ratings
public
here.
hearings, yes.
We
And
get great.
and we really do have good ratings here.
You'd like to think people are watching this meeting when they have something like that come up.
Well, they might. And they are, well, I think they're on demand if you want them.
Oh, is that right?
Yes, yes. I have watched
These
them.
meetings.
Well, I don't have cable, but at the restaurant we do.
There's other
You
ways
could,
to
you
do
could
it.
also get on your computer.
Get on your computer and
Oh,
You can go to the cable.
that's right.
You gotta turn those sports channels off over the bar and put, local politics. and,
Or soccer.
Only when we're on, right?
Just as a note, I've been, one of the notes I made was I was amazed at how much they had reduced the estimate for gasoline for next year. It went from like 178 to 150. So you just sent us the updated spreadsheet. And
yes.
I looked at it, and if all you do is prorate what it has been for 8 months, that's why, I'm sure that's why they reduced it.
Gasoline as opposed to oil?
Gasoline for vehicles.
For the
For vehicles, that's what,
Right,
okay.
It went from 178 to 150, and I thought, wow, that's a big drop. And then I looked at what we used through March.
I see, yeah.
And if you prorate what we used through March, it's gonna come in just right around or just under 150, so they've been monitoring it for actual, so.
I'm gonna have to look at
it's
that.
in
I
my
missed
question
that.
Without asking.
I sent that out today.
She
Yeah,
sent it out
I must
today.
have logged off.
There's a lot today.
So,
There was a lot, and I don't know how, I was very busy today, too. I don't know how I even got those out.
Madam Chair, I just wondered, we talked to the head of the senior center.
Oh, yes.
Will she be scheduled to appear or not?
Well, because she's so new, probably not. It's not really, she wasn't really the one who did the budget, so. Have we voted that one yet?
No,
Oh.
no, we didn't. Who did who put the budget back together then?
probably like-
Barbara? Leon?
Well, they do, I think they start in the fall, honestly.
Yeah.
So it could have been partly put together. I don't know. We could ask them, too.
I just didn't realize, because Melissa left when? October?
I don't know. It was after that. I think it was December.
I think the hearing was like early January.
Yeah, but I think that she had,
But she had finished in like the
In
first or
December, I
second week
think.
in December, I think. it
Oh,
was when she was done.
maybe she did.
so
put
the
it
budget may
together.
have been mostly put together. Yeah. Okay, do you want to start with the police department? Line 66.
Oh, did you want? Okay, I was gonna go in order.
So
66?
where do we end up? Are we gonna ask her to come in with Leon and Barbara, if she wants to at least participate in the discussion?
Oh, if she wants to,
Supposed to,
but
we just place
it's-
the budget on her and
it's-
tell her this is what you have?
That's sort of short notice, but, I mean, Bruce, is that one of yours?
Which agency?
The senior center?
Yes.
Oh, if you want to ask her if she wants to come in.
Okay, her name is Heather,
Heather something or other.
can't remember her last name.
Yeah, I don't remember either.
Was she at the Saturday meeting?
No,
No.
no, she just started, like,
Oh,
maybe
she did?
2 weeks ago or so.
If it's not listed under the senior center on the town website, I think it's in one of the announcements
Okay.
on the town website, the name.
Let me put it this way, rather than drag her in here, since you raised the question, I'll give her the option. If she understands her budget and wants to come in and talk about the programs and what's gonna be done under that budget, like the other department heads are, I'd like to hear what she has to say. If she's new, she's still trying to figure it out herself, that conversation, we may have more questions, that conversation may not go very cleanly there, in which case we'll just, get the understanding as to what was built into the budget from whoever put it together and go from there.
Yeah.
I'll certainly do that.
Okay, good.
And then she'll know what she has to face next year, right?
That's true. Oh, we're not that tough.
So on the police department, not gonna do line 66.
Right.
So I'll go to line 67. In purchase of services, I will move the motion to accept line 67 in the amount of $93,710.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor? That's 7.
7.
I have to remember how many are here today. Okay, line,
Okay, line 68, I move the motion to accept the budget in the amount of $64,575.
is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? That's 7-0.
Line 69, I make the motion to accept the budget item in the amount of $6,619.
Catching up. Discussion? All in favor? 7-0.
And then line item 70, I make the motion to accept the amount of $111,100.
Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Okay,
So for fire,
just line 72.
yep, line
You're going right to
70.
72, right?
Yep. Which column? Make the motion to accept the line item budget for $98,103.
Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0.
And for line item 73, make the motion to accept 77,000 even under supplies.
Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0.
And then I make the motion to accept line item 74 in the amount of $6,700.
Any discussion? All in favor? So that was 7-0, right? I actually looked. Gosh.
And then the public safety
Line 62.
is the
Is what
previous
line?
page.
62.
Oh, it's page before, okay.
So I make
Oh, here we go.
the motion to accept line item number 62 in the amount of $73,835.
Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0.
And to accept line item 63 in the amount of $13,200.
Any discussion? All in favor? 7-0. Okay. All right, good.
Can we go to planning board, or town planner, rather?
If you tell us what line number it is.
Line 40?
Isn't this something we already, purchase of services we didn't vote? Is that what you're going for?
So we held line 40 because there was the codification item in there that Gene
Right.
had included in a requested budget that was not
Right.
in Leon's. We had some discussion here. Gene and I spoke today. She talked to Leon, and Leon agrees that if the town wants to move forward with a codification system there, it should be more, he agrees, it should probably be more than just the zoning bylaws. And so they will need a little bit of time to figure out exactly what makes the most sense and how to bring that one forward. He didn't put it in this year because he had some other priorities he was trying to work on this year. But if the direction we want to give him is, we think it's a priority and feel that we have funding available to do it in the future, then you know, he and Gene will take a look at it over the next year, and it can bring it forward at a special or next year's annual. But I'm not prepared to act on it this year if we were to try to fund it here, so.
And actually, when you think about it, I mean, I don't know what they would include, but with the conservation having new wetland regs and the Board of Health looking at all their regs, probably is not the time to be doing a codification, until those are done.
Right, and, you know, Or maybe, one could argue having the codification in place so that you're putting the new regs into the system, the numbering system, it all works. But if it's a priority, it wasn't his priority for this year. You know, we've got some staffing positions in the fire department. We've got some other changes he's bringing forward here. You know, just trying to manage the overall budget increase. He was, you know, not prepared to do that this year, but if it's something that we feel is important, he'll, you know, do the research, work with Gene, and they'll see if they can come up with a plan for some time in the future.
Looks like it's gonna happen. She could shuffle her priorities so she doesn't have to do the same work twice.
Right.
But the amount was, I want to say eight grand or
It's around
something?
There's $8,000 for the upfront.
But that was
you know,
just planning,
That was
right?
just planning. So, you know, now you
So you're
open the
looking
door.
at-
Zoning.
You know, if I,
Or-
is it the same thing for the general bylaws, is some economy scale, you know, that's,
Probably
that was
is
part of
some
what the
economy.
question is. You know, figure out what, if you're gonna do that, which bylaws make the most sense, and rules and regs make the most sense to have. And then, you know, they can figure out what the overall cost and plan is to move.
But that was also an annual
Then
cost
then there's an
every year.
annual
Well, there was a-
$1,000, $1,200
It wasn't that
maintenance fee.
much
Oh, it
per
wasn't,
year.
okay.
No, it's
It was- there was
like
a
$1,000 or $1,200.
It wasn't,
up-
it wasn't,
Right.
whatever it was, 6 or 8,000.
8,200.
80, oh, yeah, I thought it was around 8,000. Yeah, I think that's to get
Yep.
them all codified,
I-
language cleanups, numbering cleanups.
I would find it helpful if there was like, you know, one page we can go to on a Cerberus website that says, here are all your rules and regulations, general bylaws, zoning bylaws, conservation, Board of Health.
Yeah,
I've seen one or two other towns have that. They're all in one spot, rather than
Yeah,
having to
I've
go
seen
to
that.
each board and, you know, where do I find each one?
They could probably still do that on the website, perhaps.
I haven't
but-
found it yet.
No, no, I don't think that's the way it's set up. I'm just saying they could probably
They could
set it
do
up that
They
way.
could.
Without having the codification
That
done.
would be a good first, simple step we can with our existing technology.
Right. But,
And
you
then
know,
they
we-
can figure out from there.
We do have an awful lot of stuff this year, you know, as you go through, in understanding just what's in the capital budget this year as well. You have to prioritize it for sure.
yes. So do you want to move
Right,
line
and
40? Is that
given
what-
today's, and given today's conversation, do we want a codification service, or do you want another dispatcher or something, right?
Right.
Where's the priority, so?
So are you?
So I would like to
Yeah.
move line 40. I would make a motion that we recommend to town meeting approve line 40, purchase of services for the town planner in the amount of $39,145.
Is there a second?
Second.
Bruce? Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's 7-0. Don't know if there's any other small ones, but we do have minutes, so.
I was just going to ask before we got rid of this, line, did we do veterans? Who has
No.
veterans?
I thought we did the veterans.
Did we already vote on them?
No.
No, we didn't, because we were waiting for you.
Oh, that's why, okay. Is it
I
something
never-
we could do?
I've been, I haven't had a chance to talk to them yet, but I can do so this week.
Oh, I don't want to, like, don't do it just for me. I just thought that that's usually a pretty,
Well, yeah, it is an easy one, but
And
you
it's a
should,
new agent this year.
it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'd like to talk to them.
okay.
What about the unclassified, which is on, starts on 140, line 141? I mean, a lot of that is,
We probably can, but is it group insurance that we have to wait? Sometimes that
no,
changes?
I don't think that they tell us that we had to wait on that one. No, because you know why? Because they did something last year,
They signed a
But they capped
two-year
it.
renewal that gave them a cap in
Cap
this
on the
year. and
second
they're gonna
year.
hit the cap.
Oh, okay, right,
yes,
right.
when they renewed that health insurance, yes. Thank you for the exact thing, I knew it was something like that. So,
Leon and Barbara are going to be here
they are going to be here
Thursday.
Thursday.
You know, that'll be one of the pages they talk to. Why don't we just clean it all up after they're here on Thursday, just in
And-
case
and
one
I
of those items
And
requires
I don't know
discussion.
who.
I think that those are Karen's, and she is
on the
aware.
Karen. We don't have to go line by line, but Joanne will have to itemize it. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
Ah, How cruel of you.
How cool.
Well, let's see if there's
Really,
any,
usually you're the one asking for the line by line versus let's consolidate them. So I like the way you're going.
And I have
Well,
a question.
good.
You know, I know we consolidated electricity, and it's pretty close. The number, the 100,000 there is pretty close. It's about 104 if you look at the individuals. But the question I would have, in case I'm not here, is,
You want to put 5 in it?
no.
When have you
there's a
never been
line-
here?
There's a line 143 for streetlights, and it's
Yeah.
$60,000. And my question is, what's the 60,000? Is that to maintain the bulbs, or is that for the electricity? I mean.
That many lights?
You know, so
I don't know,
why isn't that part of the other deal?
part of the electric
Yeah.
budget?
Unless, a lot of times, this is, streetlights aren't metered, and it's by length of, they estimate it by length of day, darkness. So they trigger, they go on by a sensor, and they estimate how many hours of darkness there is over the course of the, and that's how the Mass
You should have brought it up to
National
Greg.
Grid does it, but.
Because I know Greg would have been able to answer you, because we did have this discussion with him, because there was talk of changing the lights,
Oh, yes.
the bulbs to LED
Yeah,
or
so,
something. Do
yeah.
you remember that
Yeah,
conversation?
but this says streetlights, so I'm assuming.
For the
this is-
streetlights,
And that
no,
was
it
for
was for
one,
the
one
streetlights.
of the buildings, I think.
We're gonna change those to LEDs?
It was
and
discussed, I
streetlights?
don't know if we did it or not.
I don't think the
I don't
ones we're
think we
talking
did.
about here that we own.
Yeah,
There was one
The
town building
streetlights.
that had a proposal from Mass Electric. I
Oh, that's
think.
right.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't remember which one that was. Was it this building?
these are the ones that are hanging out over the
No, I thought it was
131.
police.
You know, the ones on the poles?
I'm pretty
Oh,
sure
city
these are the
complex?
town-owned, all
Yeah, I
of,
think
we
it's-
don't
I
have
think
a
it's
lot of
public safety.
streetlights, you know,
Yes.
right? My road's pretty dark.
Route 20 and Route 131 are pretty well lit in the town
That's about
common
it, but
and
look at
down
all
here.
the, Brookfield Road, that's where, there's not a lot of streetlights on Brookfield Road.
We live in the country.
Look at Arnold Road, that's dark.
Country. The dark country.
The dark side.
They cost money, and a lot of towns, you know, are consolidated,
They do.
had over the years consolidated the cost, and you tend to put them at critical intersections for safety purposes, not necessarily just to light up every street.
You have to tilt the grid outward, or can you?
No, as long as you've got distribution service out there, you tap right into that.
The ones that you're talking about, I could be wrong, and we can ask Barbara on Thursday,
That's
but
what I want to make sure that we ask.
I
because
think
might-
those
I
are,
might-
you know, state.
Okay.
Like a Mass Pike there, whatever, Highway Department, that, I thought. We'll see what Barbara says.
We can see what Barbara says. All right.
Somebody pays for it.
Somebody does pay
It's
for
not
them, yeah.
free. National Grid will get paid.
All right, why don't we, we have no reserve fund transfers. We have meeting minutes, though.
I had one quick thing to mention, just, I went on the. Board
Is this
of Health.
old business or new
This is
business?
old business. This has to do with the Board of
That's
Health. And I
next.
went on the Board of Health of Charlton, on their
Yes.
website to check their fees. And sure enough, they have an outfit that does the inspections. And I looked at some of the similar inspections to what we discussed, and I don't have specific information on which inspections they were. They're similar to what we discussed. And there was a fee that was $300, it was comparable to what we had, and $225 went to the engineering outfit, and $75 went to the Board of Health. So that's not a 90-10, that's a 75-25. But that's just an example of one or two that I looked at where I saw, okay, that's how they're doing it. I don't know how they arrived at those figures, except that's a company that does that, so they have overhead and they have to pay their expenses. And the town is free of that burden, except they get 25% that goes into their coffers, if that, unless something changes there. And they had a whole page where you could go right down and look at all of them, Title V and everything else. I just did it out of curiosity.
That was good.
So,
I'm gonna check it
It's on the
out.
throwing
website.
that out there. You know, so that's 75-25, and that's with an outside agent doing it. It's just,
Interesting.
it's part of the education process, I guess.
Do you have an extra copy of minutes with you? Not tonight? This is from
Jim does.
Yeah, these are last week's.
You
I
can't
read them
vote.
on my phone, I'd like
You
to
have
see them.
no
in my
say.
full-
You won't be able to vote, Chair.
Just have the two, right?
Yes.
We're
We're
gonna
trying
try
to do,
and-
on Tuesdays, we're going to try and do the week before, yes.
We don't have any agendas after tonight, right?
Yeah, no, oh, did I not send out Thursdays? I did send.
You didn't.
Oh, well, it's posted on the town website.
Okay, if I put Heather on there, if she wants to come Thursday night?
Leon and Barbara are coming.
Okay, so say next Tuesday.
She can come,
But she can come if she
come
wants.
Thursday, we'll put her up first, talk about
I
that
mean,
budget.
she'd
and
probably be
then-
5 minutes if she wants to come.
Maybe Barbara can help her as well, perhaps.
Oh,
HO meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
way too late.
Oh.
She's always
Okay.
good to answer those.
Okay, so
Message from Leon today.
we have the minutes of April 3rd. And I read them fairly quickly. The only thing that I really saw was that in the review of the conservation, where the admin works for 20 hours for conservation, and then she's also paid 5 hours. It's not really wetlands budget, I thought it was wetlands fees.
Oh, it's the Wetlands Protection Act, is it not?
Yeah, but I think it's some sort of, I thought it was some sort of fees that they collect for,
I thought it was she was paid out of that act because some of her time,
but where is the money coming from?
not Sturbridge.
Oh,
She said wetlands.
I know she saw wet, she said, yeah.
I think it comes from like DCR or something like that.
No, they
I thought
have,
it was from
this is
fees.
conservation.
Conservation,
admin,
that's what it is.
Staff, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I always thought it was from,
There's a revolving fund that conservation has that I thought they.
yeah,
they
because
paid
they
out.
have fees if you want a, what do you call them?
Let me check my notes.
Determination or whatever there you're
Variance or
going
something,
for.
or
I have to flip
Like
one
variance
page.
fees or?
Well, it's not really a variance, but
Yeah, there's a
Notice of
wetlands fund,
intent.
a wetlands fund that they have.
when you file a notice of intent, there's a charge, and some of it goes to the town and some of it goes to the state, right? Yes.
You're getting beyond me there.
Quite sure about that. Well, 90% sure. So I think that's where it comes from.
Okay. So how do you want to word that then?
I don't know. Well, I mean, I don't think there's really a
What's the wording now?
budget, the word budget.
Wetlands budget,
So which, wetlands
Conservation.
funds? That
conservation.
covers a multitude of sins.
That's true. Funds would be a good
Funds?
word. All right, let's use what, funds. All right. Any other,
Yeah, let me give you a little one. On my name up top, you didn't put my initials after that.
Sorry, I did not bring a copy.
oh, yes, you're right.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, you had other things to take care of, we understand that.
Jim, did you want these back? I'll just mark that for her, and she can take this with her.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
All right, why are some of the
Type is so small.
votes 6 and some are 7-0? They were all 7.
No, there
Is
was
that
one
right? It's-
meeting, we had 3 people not here.
No, this was the
When?
3rd.
April 3rd?
Yeah.
There was one that I did not vote for.
Yeah, but then it should have shown abstention.
Uh,
No,
No.
that was my error. I did not do the zoning board of appeals. I skipped it altogether.
Oh, I added it, I
Came
thought.
from, and that's what the 7 is. That was it was the week before that you voted on
we
it.
had
three.
I
Oh.
just missed it in the minutes, so we added them back
Oh,
in
okay.
the week. So that's why, it's right.
So
It's
they're in
just-
there.
Oh, okay.
So we can probably say, we'll note that. I probably should have noted that. I did add them.
Oh, okay.
I didn't specify that it was from the previous,
Right, so I'll just find out
Just-
which date that was and put the date in.
yeah.
That
Okay.
this is, okay.
All right, yeah, because actually, I just noticed that one. Okay. Anything else on the April 3rd? Is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor? So that's 5
5.
against, abstaining.
He was.
They weren't there.
Bruce wasn't there
You
either.
weren't here either, okay.
So it's 5-0.
502.
Yeah, she was sick that
Jared
day.
and Bruce abstained.
It's 4-3, so that's Bruce.
Let me tell you, the zoning board of appeals, I'll give you the date.
That was like the first night, wasn't it?
Oh, I can tell you, I wrote them down in the book.
Yeah, it was,
What line is that?
was it March 29th? No, the day we voted it. I have March
ZBA?
29th.
Yeah, March 29th.
Yeah.
And it was 7-0, you're right.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, April 5th.
So I asked.
Oh, you didn't know all the
Yeah.
library people. Is it
So
on
I
their
looked- I
website?
looked them up.
Oh, it's Wetlands Protection Fund. So fund was right.
Oh, thank you.
Barbara, oh, thank you.
I don't, I looked online to get the names, but I don't think all of those, I'm not sure if, A, the names are correct, and B, all of the trustees were here. So it was hard for me to remember who
Oh,
was
wait,
here.
Joyce Sennett was here.
Joyce, okay.
Sinnott, I think. How many were here?
Three women, and I got the guy. Mullins.
Well, that would be right then. Jackie, Dolores, and Joyce, and Steve Mullen.
Jackie and,
You have Jackie and Dolores, and then Joyce.
so Joyce was one I missed.
Yes,
Okay, I'll add her.
yes. She was sitting the row behind.
Right.
Okay. I think that,
No, there was one initial, Jim, was that the one?
Yeah,
yes,
we had KB for KD.
Yeah.
right.
Karen.
It was right in the top, but then,
Yeah, and
through
then
it.
down below, it started at the bottom.
I
of the
always
page.
wanted to make her KB.
I noticed that.
Changing her last name.
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to make those changes, Joanne? I'll make them and, okay, yep.
One place where it says LC inform the committed, it should be committee.
Say that again?
There's one part in the first discussion of the Board of Health budget.
Okay.
Where it says
Oh, yeah.
LC inform the committed.
Well, maybe she's,
Committee.
maybe she thinks we should be committed.
By that time, I think we were committed.
That won't happen
Are they
till May.
coming, are they coming before us again?
Did you talk to them again?
I'm gonna touch base with them. I mean, we've approved their budget, so it's really kind of it's really a warrant issue, a warrant article issue, so.
Well, with the,
I guess I'd like to get some feedback from, I mean, it looks like, we're kind of off topic right now, but it looks like in their current, what do you call it, revolving fund, there is money that goes in that's Title V money. So I mean, I think they could probably do it with the existing revolving fund, but the limit, it may be limited by the amount of money they'd have to pay out.
yeah, I think that night, though, that Barbara had texted that said that,
She thought they needed a
a
separate.
new one, yeah.
But you actually looked at the way that was set up. It says for Title V, like unusually complicated Title V situations, it was actually money that could go in and out of that fund. So, I mean, they might have a way around, and then a way around if they wanted to do it that way. I don't think they should, but, I mean, it seems like if we're gonna do it, it makes sense to do it this way. It probably should be another fund, but if they decided, I mean, they can go ahead and set fees on their own. I don't know if they would have a mechanism to hire this inspector past, in the next fiscal year without having another revolving fund unless they use the existing one, but then they would be cut off by the caps, I think.
Right.
That's the way I see it, you know.
So I still can't I can't grasp that it will be paid on fee basis.
Maybe we should do this under old business, because now
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
losing the track here of the
Okay.
Yeah,
minutes.
we're kind of,
You're right.
this is a tangent, but I have,
Yes.
I took a lot of notes. I haven't circled back to Linda and Bree yet. I was thinking about maybe meeting with them,
Okay.
seeing where they were. I know we asked them to calculate the fees 3 different ways, potential fees, based on what, the old Alyssa's time, or based on what Charlton's doing, or based on what they think it should be for, using the Jamie. They'll probably come up with 3 quite different numbers. And so there's that,
If I could find it on Charlton, they might be able to find
Yeah,
another
it-
town that they can get it
they
from,
were
just
gonna
to
use
get a
Charlton as
yardstick.
kind of a baseline, so
Yeah.
they probably already have that data.
Right.
But anyways, yeah, we have to revisit that, but it doesn't affect their budget per se.
Right.
So there isn't like a lot of urgency to do it, but I guess I would like to see what Barbara and
Well,
Ian are thinking, because
Yeah.
it seems like when they talked about it on the Saturday meeting, they seemed like they were a little bit surprised by it. So,
Right.
yeah.
And on, yeah, it will be a good discussion probably with them.
Yeah.
Do inspectors have to be, because she said that this person has to be an employee, right? Because
They don't have
He
to
or
be.
she-
No, they don't
She
have to
preferred
be,
that it would
but
be that
that's the way they wanted it
they're
done.
doing work and making decisions on behalf of the town,
Right.
where
I
a
mean,
contractor wouldn't be able to do that?
well, no, she thinks it's better for the town to have control over what they do. Whereas, like, what Charlton is doing is they're just outsourcing it to a third party.
But does that mean that before any decision is made, it has to go, through the agent to make the ultimate decision, I guess is my point, right? You can have a consultant doing it, but you're overseeing that consultant making the ultimate decision. Whereas if it were the town person, employee, Title V engineer, if you will, he or she would make that decision right then and there.
Well, I think the town ultimately would have responsibility for approving or not disapproving a plan. I think I think it has to come down to managing.
Doesn't the agent have to sign off on it?
Yeah, I think so. We'd have to still sign, so
Still?
I think
Okay.
so.
Would the
I
only
don't think
difference-
that would
sense.
change.
Only difference be that the independent contractor would have their own liability and
Potentially, yeah.
Like that?
They probably would have their own insurance.
Right.
I mean, it could be structured. I mean, if they, depending on how they allocate with the 90-10 rule, well, we can talk about it under old business, or you want me to complete my thought?
Well, I thought this was old business now.
No, we haven't done the minutes yet, finished the
Oh.
minutes yet.
So confusing.
I'm sorry.
Or we could wait till Barbara and Lee and come in on Thursday
Yeah.
and really
Yeah.
engage in
Yeah,
conversation
finish your
then.
thought after, I mean, I'm,
There is a way to do it that would be revenue neutral, I think, but it probably wouldn't work with 90-10. It might work with 75-25, so.
was
let's-
there anything else that needed to be changed?
Yes, is there anything else in the minutes that needs to be changed? Now that we
I'm sorry, I thought we
have
voted.
everyone, no.
or one of many tangents that will go on.
Yes, we do. I tried to get back on track, but
You're
nobody
pretty
listened
good
to
about
me.
that.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of April 5th as
Madam Chair,
amended?
I move that we accept the minutes of April
We were
5th.
here that day, right? Yeah, it was just Merit.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? That's 6 opposed, abstaining, and that's Jared, because he was not here. 6, okay. Now we can go to old business.
We said that.
We've exhausted the
What?
discussion.
What remark?
Old business.
Oh, actually, new business is first, sorry. New business first. I don't know why I do that. I prefer old business first, but anyway, I wrote it. Any new business? Any old business? Do you want to go back, Mike, or do you want to wait
No,
till
we-
Thursday?
I mean, I guess my point is, I've thought about it, I took a lot of notes, I wanted to circle back to Bree and Linda, maybe meet with them,
Okay,
and then also get some feedback from Leon
Right.
and
Barbara.
Barbara, but it isn't something that's going to affect what
Right.
the line item budget. It's something that, I mean, in theory,
right,
it could affect the amount of money that goes into the general fund, so it is kind of a indirect staff increase. I mean, we're
Right.
still gonna have a full-time inspector, no matter how we do this, and full-time agent. So that's already been established. the question is, are we gonna collect, all of the revenues coming, permitting fees or, a portion of them? And how would that, how would we do it going forward if we don't set up this revolving fund?
Right.
So,
And you just made me think of another thing. So we would not, status quo on this position at the moment, right? No increase on the budget and all that. But we would not anticipate any reserve fund transfer to fund any additional salary.
I wouldn't,
Because it wouldn't,
I
it's
wouldn't
not
think so.
unforeseen, is my point.
right,
So I wouldn't expect to see a reserve fund transfer at the end of, the end of,
You would expect the
Fiscal year,
fees
you know
to
what I'm
cover
saying?
it, because we're gonna collect more
Right.
than we pay out.
right,
plus the fee should be
does everyone else
coming
agree?
ahead of time.
yeah.
Everyone else agrees?
If it's paid out, if the Title V inspection is paid out to the person doing it out of the revolving fund,
Right.
yes, because no matter how little, how much that is, it's all coming from that fund versus
Means-
elsewhere. I still have the question of why do we treat the plumbing and electrical inspectors and employees with getting fees where we estimate how much we have, and we have more inspections than we estimated in the budget. We have a reserve fund transfer, but we're okay with that because we have more inspections coming in that are covering the cost, the revenues there. And
Absolutely.
I still need to hear from Leon and Barbara as to why this position's looked at differently.
Taken, yeah, no,
Well,
absolutely.
what's happening now is that Jamie is there was excess money in the department head account,
Right.
so she's being paid that way.
Yep.
And then the fees are going straight into the general fund.
Right.
So there's no connection between the two.
Right.
Although, I mean, hopefully they balance out, at least so we're bringing in more than we,
Well, the other thing I'm curious, I mean, okay, the money is allocated in the budget,
Right.
regardless. Where did they come up with the, $40 an hour?
that might be the rate that,
So she was,
well, that's for the perk part of it, right? For the perk
Yes.
test?
so Jamie Terry, who's doing the Title V work now, is a part-time employee. That $40 was her hourly rate when she was the employee as the agent here. They just continued her hourly rate, and she's doing that work on an hourly basis now, through the end of this fiscal year.
Is that confirmed?
Barbara texted the confirmation.
She confirmed the hourly rate, Mike, but I don't think she confirmed that it was just a continuation of her current salary.
40 seems higher than, that's 80,000, that's like 80,000 a year.
Right.
No,
Well,
she just
actually,
said
no, it's less.
40 for
No, but it was a
everything.
part-time,
35 hours,
it
so
was,
Yeah, so it's probably
What
just
am I saying? Pardon?
continue,
It was around 70.
for 35 hours, it would be different, yeah, more like 70. So it's probably just a continuation of her.
yeah, and I don't even think she was 35. She was in that position on a part-time basis, even though we funded it full-time, so.
Right.
It was funded for 35, but she wasn't working 35.
Right, it was more like 3 days a week.
So they just prorated that into an hourly rate based on 35 hours a week, and maybe that's where they came up with the $40 an hour. That's what I speculated.
Yeah.
So she's getting the same amount of money that she was making.
Yeah.
Yes.
Her salary was the equivalent of $40 an hour.
Okay, just sounds kind of fishy to me, that's all. And then,
Well, now
to
she's-
go to the 90-10,
Because, yeah.
I mean, you would pay, sometimes you can pay someone a higher rate for like part-time work. I mean, that's kind of they would,
Yeah,
like a
say
per diem?
40 hours, $40 an hour times 35 hours a week is 1,400 times 52 weeks is
72,800.
72,800. So I think they took her salary and backed into that hourly rate.
yeah, that works out.
It's not uncommon.
No?
But the new person's making less than
If
that.
there's a transition like that, it's not uncommon.
Okay.
So,
Well, plus it was budgeted at
it
full-time.
was budgeted at full-time, even though it was mostly like 3
Part-time.
days a week.
Right.
And they were okay with that now for that in the past, but now it seems like they want to, with these new initiatives, they want to fully utilize the full-time person and not but not have her do those inspections. I guess if we don't go along with this, then she'll just have to get the training, do these inspections, and spend a good chunk of her time out of the office. You know, that's,
Well, if all these things that we have to cover have a window that they have to be done, like the marijuana regs and the tobacco and
Yeah.
everything else, once those are accomplished and they don't have to be done anymore, then it begs the question, do we still need this other person to do the Title V? Or is it that gonna create 2 or 3 years from now, enough available time for the agent to be doing that? Go back, revert to doing it through the agent, because unless more stuff comes along that we have to get caught up on, because that's the
Yeah, I
argument
mean-
I heard, that we were kind of behind the curve, and we had to get caught up on things, and we needed the agent to do those things. So we were gonna use this as a secondary, as a Plan B, to get that, to cover that in the meantime, until she gets caught up on the things that,
Yeah, but then when the question was asked, let me see if I wrote it down, what the backlog was, she said there was none.
that was last year.
On inspections, she said.
Inspections,
It was
no.
on inspections.
well, we have we added full-time hours to the inspector last year. So,
Right, we did.
and I think the previous health agent was doing more of that work too.
Yeah, I thought the question is there a backlog in Title V that we need to do this work? And I thought the answer is no, they process as it comes along. But because the agent was spending a fair amount of time dealing with Title V reviews and inspections and so forth, the other list of items, priorities that Board of Health came up with, and Bree and the chair were talking about, weren't being addressed, and this year coming forward, they want to use the full-time agent to address those issues, and in order to do that, still have Jamie come back and handle the Title V.
And that was my point. There should be a window within which that's accomplished, and then you have to reevaluate the situation. And you may not need that other person.
Yeah, it could go back to the way it was. I mean, maybe the opioid crisis goes away, maybe the marijuana thing becomes like routine, maybe.
Well, I
you
think,
know,
the gist I got was more regulatory compliance stuff that we
Yeah,
do.
that's a one-off, because, yeah, they have to bring up the regs up to date.
Get
And
everything-
these other things, we don't know if the opioid, we hope it's a one-time thing, and it starts to go down.
Hold my
the-
breath.
What was the other thing? The
Similar
marijuana,
discussion we have with Chief Ward. What do you want your staff to be focusing on, right?
Yeah.
You know, if it's responding to this, and this, you don't have a lot of time to do that. If you want to do that, then I need to get another staff position to kind of take some of the burden off these people to free up the
The other
time to
thing we
focus on
can't
the other
predict is
priorities.
there's a window where that medical marijuana, that's gonna turn to retail at some
Right,
point
and
down the
that's-
road. And
that-
that's gonna, the
that
whole
could be
game's
five-
gonna change.
that could be a 5-year thing, because apparently you have to, like, when people sell these products, you have to verify the content and all that stuff. But I mean, it is a department that's, I mean, for a while they had a full-time agent and they had a part-time inspector. And then for a few years, they had a part-time agent and a full-time inspector, even though it was budgeted full-time. So I think they're adjusting to what they see as the needs of the, the times, and I guess they have a certain amount of autonomy as an, independently elected board, but there are, funding mechanisms that they have to
Yep.
comply with, that we have to kind of be on the same page with. So, but it doesn't, if we decide to go ahead and do this, it doesn't mean that it would be permanent. It may work out to be a good separation of duties, just like we do with the building inspector. We don't have him doing the plumbing and the
Right.
electrical.
Right.
What would the process be to undo it? The same as getting it approved?
Well, if you take away the revolving
Right.
fund, then you're undoing it.
Right.
So the town could, now the way that the revolving fund laws have changed, I think those are set up kind of permanently, but the limits can change from meeting to
Right.
meeting. So we could zero fund that. I mean, see, the problem they would have now if they wanted to use the current ones, I think the maximum, I mean, I didn't check the book from last year, but a couple of years ago was $20,000.
I think it's the same, yeah.
And that wouldn't be enough for them to do all this. I think the
No.
Title V business is like a $20,000 operation. So that
Right.
would alone would use up their capacity. And they couldn't do the other the festivals and all.
Yeah, a lot
all
of that
stuff.
money is to festivals, the tattoo,
Right.
and the,
Yeah,
anything where they have a lot of food.
Right, but
That
that's
sort of
probably
thing.
another 10 or 15,000. So, because there's a lot of activity around those things. And I guess there are a lot of fees that we bring in a lot of fees with those festivals. But, you know, I think it's, we need to get more information from them and see what Leon and Barbara are thinking,
All right,
see how to.
all right. Any other old business? Public access? None? Have to ask.
We should have people call in.
No. Shh. Is there a motion to it? No tweeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Mike.
Oh,
Yeah.
before we do that, so we talked about
Second,
schedules.
now you can have
So we got,
discussion.
so we got Leon and Barbara, maybe
Thursday.
Council Lead, on Thursday.
Yes.
That completes all the department heads, should complete all the
Yeah, except for
majority
school.
stuff, except for school. So
Well,
what are we gonna do
content.
next week, and when are we gonna see the warrant article? What's
Well,
our
that's
plans
just
going
it.
forward?
I
here?
don't know. I did put warrant articles on for Thursday, just in case.
Oh, you
I
did?
I know, I'm sorry. I didn't,
28th?
I forgot to send it out to you. What?
Oh, I'm sorry, didn't he say that he has until the 28th?
Yeah, I thought they were coming late in the month.
They can start with us.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
When that happens,
certainly, for example, with money articles,
right.
are
when-
usually easier.
When that happens, and I can bring it up Thursday if you want, or you can have a, one-on-one discussion, whatever you want to do. Can we make sure that there's version control, please?
Yes, we'll try.
You know,
I know we do
honestly,
have a lot of problems with that.
You watch it, we don't want anything messed up, and if they're gonna change stuff, see if we made any adjustments first, and vice versa, I suppose, but we really do need some version control on that file.
Yes, we did have troubles, well, the last 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yes, Jared fixed, I think, one thing 5 times
yeah,
last year.
or 5 things.
And thank
once.
goodness he knew how to do it quickly. So, yeah.
Right, so we don't want to get too far ahead out of Leon and Selectmen, because if we
No,
have
we
those
won't.
issues.
We
We could
don't.
have, maybe
Well, we
maybe
could
we could have
always-
some discussions through those, if there are any,
could always
we're
take a day
okay with
off.
them, we can vote them all at one last
But if we're
meeting.
making updates, they shouldn't be,
Well, that's on the warrant article.
That-
You're
that's-
still talking about the budget
Oh,
warrant,
sorry.
right?
I'm talking about warrant,
Oh,
same
you're talking
thing.
about
If-
warrants
if,
too?
maybe we can have a
I mean, we
discussion,
still
figure out
have to
what
have
our
the school
issues are,
in.
have some dialogue if we need it, or let them get
We-
through their
we used to
process
have
before we
dialogue
vote.
with them.
Before we vote, and then they vote something different, and then we're
Right.
re-voting, we.
Yeah, well, and the selectmen have to vote it too, that's
Right.
the thing. That's where we sometimes get the changes, when the selectmen do them.
So
So-
we could be in a position where we've talked
Now
about
there's
it,
a
we're
new
all okay with
selectman.
it, instead of voting it, let's let them get through their process, and we can come back one night,
Well, that's
just
true, and just vote them
the
all
whole
at
thing,
once.
including any
Maybe we shouldn't
adjustments
be
they
so
have,
quick to
to
vote.
make it clean.
but not only that, Kathy, before, it didn't seem to be an issue, like, if we knew, because we meet on Tuesdays, they might be voting, yesterday, right, today's Tuesday, so they could have been voting yesterday, for example, we're voting today, we've got control of the file. So Barbara was always kind enough to tell, myself or Kevin or whoever,
Right.
this was the vote by the Board of Selectmen. We'd key that in, so, the control of the
Right.
file, if you will, is with us. And then we turn it over and give control to them. I mean, it's a real simple issue.
We'll have a draft warrant
That
tomorrow.
we can't seem to do.
Wow.
Sorry, I missed that one.
Used to be able to do it. So we have a new selectman.
Yeah.
Yes, we do, yes. Wait a minute, we have a motion here, but yes, we do
I
have,
seconded that motion.
yes, we do.
I have the selectmen.
Sorry, Ken.
With that, I'm just going to talk to Leon.
Yes, we do have a new selectman, he's young, too.
Yeah,
Kibitsky?
Kibitsky, yeah.
Yep.
So
Supernaut got reelected.
Supernaut
Mike
and
and
Kibitsky.
Yep,
Craig Moran
Okay.
is out.
Okay.
Yep.
Excellent.
I don't know
So
what the
Bruce, I
turnout
heard your
was. didn't
question,
see the
yes, I
count.
think that, start with Leon, and then,
yes.
that he should, if you need to have further discussions with the selectmen, it might be with Chair or somebody from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sorry. All right, back to Mike's motion, which was made now 5 minutes ago. And
I
you seconded it?
Yes, I did.
So is, all in favor of adjourning at 9:21? Good. 7-0, thank you. Sorry, I'm a little tired tonight.
Sorry, Kathy.
Hi.